Hi, my name is Chris Corey, and I'm here with Bill Toole, who is running for Lieutenant Governor on the Democratic side. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. My name is Bill Toole. I am running for Lieutenant Governor. I'm on the Democratic Party ticket, and I'm running as a pragmatic progressive.
Wonderful. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're running?
Thanks, Chris. Grew up in Winston-Salem. I raised my daughter in Gaston County. I lived there for a number of years and practiced environmental law in Mecklenburg County for 27 years. When I was living in Gaston County, I was the chairman of the Gaston County Democratic Party, and then I went on to become a city councilman in Belmont, and we made a lot of changes in Belmont, and here I am now. I've spent a lot of time in the political arena, and I became really frustrated by the direction that North Carolina has been going over the past decade. We've lost our way. We've used to be a leader in public education and in healthcare and in the environment, and it seems like we've lost our leadership positions, and we've actually embarrassed ourselves in a lot of different ways. And so I was asked to and decided it was time for me to step up and do what I could for our state.
That's great. I understand that you are the only candidate that is promoting controlled access to cannabis. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
That's right, Chris. I am the only candidate that has a plan for controlled access to cannabis. By that, we have a plan that would allow our farmers to have a good quality cash crop that replaces the lost tobacco that I remember growing up. We would also automatically expunge the records of those who have been incarcerated for nonviolent possession of an ounce and a half or less of cannabis. And this would raise $450 million a year, which we would put towards public education and health care. So this is a robust plan. We would be number 35 of the states in the United States that have allowed some sort of controlled plan. One of the things that I learned when I was looking into this is veterans are very supportive of legalized cannabis, and here's why. They need good quality pain management tools that are not opiate based, and they are very concerned about that. I've also met a lot of grandmothers, for example, who would like to be able to access cannabis to control arthritis. I've learned that there are certain forms of epilepsy which are untreatable except through cannabis. So there's a whole lot of medical reasons why this should be allowed. One of the things that's been very interesting too, I met with a lot of sheriffs over the course of this campaign. Every sheriff I've asked every sheriff, what's the single biggest issue you face? Every single one of them says it's the opiate crisis. So then I've said, what would you do about it? And they say we need behavioral health, we need therapy, we need treatment. Allowing controlled access to cannabis does two things. One, in those states that have allowed it, they've seen opiate use fall by as much as 43%.
Wow,
that's a lot. And secondly, this $450 million a year that we would raise, we could put towards behavioral health. So we could have drug and alcohol treatment programs that we don't currently have. So it's a real opportunity for North Carolina to get back in a leadership position again.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful plan. You had also mentioned education. I know that North Carolina used to be a leader in education,
Yeah,
so can you tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Well, education is really the bedrock and the foundation of economic development in North Carolina. We've lost our way. We need to have teachers' assistants in every classroom from pre-K through third grade. We know that if you read on grade level by third grade, you're much more likely to graduate from high school. And if you graduate from high school, you're much more likely to have family-sustaining employment. If you don't read on grade level, you're much more likely to not make it through high school and then to get into trouble. Teachers' assistants are in the classrooms are proven to really improve the results of our students, of our young students. And we've not had teachers' assistants in our classrooms since about 2010. So we are really far behind on that. We also need to modernize our vocational training system. Not everyone's going to go to 2-year degree or 4-year college. And so we need to have a modern vocational training system in our high schools that'll help our kids graduate ready for family-sustaining employment. What's modern vocational training?
Right, I was about to ask, what is modern?
Well, I was anticipating your questions.
Thank you.
Modern vocational training would include things like not only HVAC or auto mechanic training, but it would also include coding, for example, for computers. North Carolina has 20,000 jobs which are not filled today in the coding industry, and they can be filled by properly trained high school graduates. So this is an enormous opportunity here in North Carolina, and we really need to address this need.
Speaking of the coding, I understand that you can do that from anywhere. Like if you're here in Greenville, you can have a coding job from a company in New York City. What does that require for them to be able to do that?
Well, that's exactly right. So if you have access to broadband, if you have access to the properly speed up internet, then you can have a job here in Greenville and work from your home, but serve a business in New York or even in California. But you've got to have the right kind of broadband. And in traveling across the state, I can't tell you how many communities do not have quality broadband in the rural communities. Rural broadband has got to be a priority here in North Carolina. It provides access to these jobs. It provides access to health care. It means that our students don't have to go into the Hardee's parking lot and freeload off of the Wi-Fi for Hardee's in order to get their homework done. This is a real important issue. We need to have the same kind of a initiative for rural broadband that we had 100 years ago for electricity. It's every bit as fundamental and core as electricity is. So this is another one of my top initiatives, is to promote rural broadband and to make sure that we get this into every rural community.
Great, thank you very much. You just going back to you were talking about healthcare, some of the benefits of cannabis. What other aspects of your plan or healthcare plan would you want to talk about?
Well, we've also, I mean, it's a no-brainer. We've got to have Medicaid inclusion. And what is Medicaid inclusion? We've heard it called Medicaid expansion, but here's the thing. Medicaid inclusion means that working folk who can't otherwise purchase affordable health care would have support so they can get good quality health care. And there's about 500,000 or 600,000 folks here in North Carolina. They're farmers, they're commercial fishermen. I used to be a commercial fisherman. They are carpenters. I used to be a carpenter. They are all kinds of working folk who earn too much to qualify for Medicaid, but aren't qualified for subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. And Medicaid expansion means that these folks would be able to get access to health care for example, preventative health care for a child who's got asthma, so that she can get asthma shots as opposed to having an emergency and having to go to the hospital with an emergency. So this is really important. My parents have, my father has Alzheimer's, mom is developing dementia. And I've learned that there are a lot of families who are caring for aging loved ones without support. We also need to help our families care for their aging loved ones. This is a growing need here in North Carolina, and we're not talking about. Another issue that's very important and on my mind is the teen suicide rate. the teen suicide rate in North Carolina is the leading cause of death of teens, second only to auto accidents. 1 in 4 of our students is coming to school hungry, homeless, or with trauma in the home. We must put professionals, psychologists, social workers, and nurses in every school to help deal with this enormous problem that's affecting our youth, and that's affecting their ability to do well and to graduate on time.
That sounds like a great plan. It does sound like it might cost a little extra money. How would you fund that type of program, instituting that type of program?
Well, this is where controlled access to cannabis comes back in. That would raise $450 million every year, which we would put directly into supporting these professionals in our schools. It would make a tremendous difference. So that is the first way that we'd start funding that.
Great. You're also an environmental lawyer.
I am.
Can you tell me about your stance on the environment? Do you believe
climate change is real?
Okay.
I mean, that's and it's not just me talking about it. It's not scientists. I've met with a lot of farmers, and they're telling me that when we've had 4 hurricanes in 5 years, when their fields are constantly being flooded, when the seasons are out of sync with what they know in their growing seasons, these farmers know that these severe weather changes, they're real, and we've got to start addressing them. So in North Carolina in 2012, the General Assembly, which was all Republicans, said that we are not going to allow our policymakers, our planners, to use science to prepare for climate change. I believe in science. I believe in data. The way you plan for something is you use data. And we have not been using this data in order to plan for rising sea level, for the saltwater intrusion that's affecting our fields and our groundwater in the eastern part of the state. North Carolina had a very useful solar tax credit which promoted the implementation of solar fields and made North Carolina the leading producer of solar energy in the country, second only to California. That tax credit was repealed in 2015. We can and must be the leading producer of not only solar energy in the United States, but also wind. And here's where wind farms become very interesting. We have the wind here in the eastern part of the state to produce a lot of wind energy, but it also means that as we put up these wind farms, there'd be a lot of opportunity for manufacturing these turbines right here in our eastern part of the state. And those are good jobs, they're well paying, and we really need to promote wind energy here in North Carolina.
And that would be an excellent idea. And I also understand that North Carolina has the ports that could then transport these turbines and the towers and the blades to other parts of the eastern United States.
That's exactly right. So I think it's a no-brainer that North Carolina needs to be the leading producer of these wind turbines. You ship them down to the ports, Wilmington and Southport, and then those turbines can then be supplied up and down the eastern seaboard, and we become the leading producer of these very valuable and high value products. And that makes North Carolina have good jobs down in the eastern part of the state and replace some of these jobs that we've lost.
Great. For those people who do not know what the Lieutenant Governor actually does, can you just tell us a little bit about if you become the Lieutenant Governor, or when you become Lieutenant Governor, what your position will entail?
Sure. So the Lieutenant Governor runs separately in North Carolina from the governor. And so you don't run on a ticket. And so we currently have a Democratic governor in Governor Cooper and a Republican lieutenant governor, and they've been at odds. The lieutenant governor sits on the State Board of Education, so education is a very important aspect of the job and what I'd be doing. The lieutenant governor also sits on the Council of State, so there's a lot of influence that the lieutenant governor can have on policy. The lieutenant governor also breaks ties in the North Carolina Senate. And right now, with 4 more Democrats elected to the North Carolina Senate, there would be a tie. And that means that the lieutenant governor breaking that tie would have a lot of influence. And of course, being lieutenant governor with a lot of energy, I'd be out around the state introducing these issues to folks in the Lions clubs and in the churches, explaining why it's important to have Medicaid inclusion, why it's important to become a leader in wind farm technology, for example. So these are the sorts of things that the lieutenant governor can and should be doing and hasn't always been doing.
Great. Is there anything else you would like to share with the viewers about you or your race?
Sure. I just want to say that I've been a environmental lawyer for 27 years. I quit my practice 10 months ago to run full-time, and I've been running full-time ever since, driving all over the state. I put about 5,000 miles a month on the car. And what I've found is North Carolinians want pragmatic, progressive leadership that will start solving problems rather than fighting and creating division in this state. So that has been my goal. That's why I'm running. And I just want to say I'd like your vote. My name again is Bill Toole. I'm running for lieutenant governor, and I'm the right tool for the job. Thank you so much.